They were playing with it one night, and usually nothing happened. But at one point, they got into if I remember correctly,
Oh, is this the argument with the phone?
they got into an argument with some type of being on it. They said something along the lines of, if you're real, make the phone ring, and the phone rang. And they did that several times, and the conversation started devolving into yelling at each other. And so finally, they unplugged the telephone, and it rang one more time. And then that's when everyone skedaddled.
Welcome to the Parsonage Files. Join Pastor Rick and his brother Rob each week as they explore the odd, funny, and mysterious stories from the world of faith and church history. Let's get started. Here is Pastor Rick.
This is Rick, and I have been a United Methodist pastor now for well over 20 years. And with me today is my brother Rob. Hey, Rob, how are you?
I am doing well. I was wondering if I could break protocol.
You can do whatever you want to do.
So this week I've been kind of doing some research, and I thought maybe the research I was doing and
Okay.
that everyone would be interested in.
Okay, so what have you been researching?
So is using a Ouija board wrong and or dangerous? So that was my original thought process. So I started going down, as you do, using the Google machine to figure that out.
Like many of us do.
As the way God intended it. And then, consulted the handy dandy Bible app I have.
Okay.
And what came up was a story about the Witch of Endor in the Bible and talking to dead spirits. And so this is where I kind of thought, is it just a nebulous idea? This might be the worst idea for a podcast in the history of podcasting.
It couldn't be any worse than what we normally do.
Well, that's kind of what I thought. As maybe we could discuss that. What you know about it, what I know about it, what we think about it.
Okay.
What God thinks about it.
All right. That's good. So let's begin with the Bible. And you brought up the story of the Witch of Endor.
Which, when I first heard that, you know where my mind went, right?
It went to Ewoks, did it not?
It did, right to Ewoks, Princess Leia. Yeah.
That, I believe, is where they got the name for the planet in Star Wars, Endor.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
I did not know
that. It has nothing to do with Star Wars at all. In the Bible, it is a place where a woman, and we call her a witch, but she's more of a medium, right? Yeah. So I would look at the character as more of what we would today call a medium, somebody who communicates with spirits,
right,
or the dead in particular.
And so my understanding of the story in the Bible, and correct me if I'm wrong,
yeah,
which you will, is that so at the time the first king of Israel was a dude named Saul.
Correct. He was the first king of Israel,
and he was basically the anointed one. He was going to be all that in a bag of chips.
Saul would be. I always picture Saul as what would happen if you made the captain of your high school football team the king of the country.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that would go around like, "Hey, big guy."
Yeah, calling everyone big guy or hey, chief.
Right.
And he was
good looking. Everyone loved him.
Probably, a head taller than everybody else. Athletic, smart. Just seemed to have it all going on. But then his downfall was he didn't like to listen to anybody, and that included God,
which can never turn out well.
He is getting replaced by somebody else because he keeps...
And that would be David of David and Goliath.
That would be David of David and Goliath. God then decides to replace Saul with David, and Saul then becomes super jealous, tries to kill David.
Does he have to train his own replacement? Because no one likes to train their own replacement.
Well, that's true. And so Saul is angry about that. Saul's son is BFFs with David. It's just all going bad for Saul. And the end of the story is there's a big battle with the Philistines, and it looks like Israel's going to lose. Saul prays. God doesn't talk to him,
And his mentor passed, correct?
And his mentor, who's Samuel, has passed. And so in a final act of desperation, even though he himself outlawed it in the land, Saul decides he is going to go to a medium or a witch, if you will, and communicate with the dead Samuel for advice on how to beat the Philistines.
Yeah, dude, I've never heard this story in
You
my
never
life.
heard this story? Yeah, and so Saul puts a costume on so nobody knows it's the king because he said don't do this, and he's going to go do it himself.
It's right out of the movies.
Imagine that, a politician doing what they tell others not to do.
That I can't wrap my mind around that.
So fictional. So fictional.
Yeah, I'm glad we don't live in that world.
I'm glad we don't live in a world where leaders just do what they tell everybody else they shouldn't. So Saul goes
and then hide it.
And then Saul goes to Endor, meets up with this witch, if you will, and she is able to summon Samuel. And Samuel, to make a long story short, shows up. He's really cranky. And he tells Saul, look,
why'd you wake me up?
Why'd you wake me up? Because you're going to be here in the land of the dead with me by tonight. You're going to lose. You're going to die. David's going to take your kingdom. And guess what? Your whole, all your heirs are going to die with you. I'm going back to bed. And
lose my number.
Yeah. And lose my number. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
So I had never heard that story. And it's described like it's not a weird thing to be able to conjure the dead.
Right, and the Bible,
it was banned from Israel, not because it didn't work, but because it did work, and they didn't want you doing it.
Correct. There is no indication anywhere in the Bible that communicating with the spiritual realm is not possible. But if you think about it from a Christian perspective, if you're a Christian, you almost by definition believe in the spiritual realm, or by definition.
Definition,
right? You believe in a higher creator. You believe in
life after death.
You believe in spiritual beings, angels. Well, what's an angel? An angel is a supernatural being of some kind,
right?
Not divine. Only God is divine, but they are some sort of paranormal entity. And if you believe in that, then believing that you could possibly communicate with some entity other than God is also a possibility.
And this is where I get freaked out.
Okay.
So what makes me feel good at night that I can go to bed is that the Ouija board does not conjure up, for example, the Ouija board does not conjure up anything. It's just a plastic planchette. That's the right word for that thing. And that it's a game the kids play.
So it's important to know that the Ouija board is made by Hasbro.
And that in itself gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling.
And it comes off of the same production line as Monopoly, Risk.
And they do not have Clue.
Right. Yeah.
And they do not have any special connection to the spiritual world.
Last time I checked, they did not.
So I would assume the Ouija board in itself there isn't someone at Hasbro, some type of magical magician who puts a spell over each Ouija board as it goes down there.
No, I think it's important to note that a Ouija board in and of itself has no particular power.
It's the power that you give it.
It is simply a tool that you can use to open yourself up to spiritual entities. Think of it as prayer, if you will.
Right.
Prayer is opening yourself up to God and communicating with God. And sometimes we use tools for that, right? The Bible, right? You go read the Bible. Some people have a cross. Certain Christian traditions have like the rosary, right?
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Catholic, right? Things that open you up to the spiritual. Well, in my mind, the Ouija board works the same way. Unfortunately, it's not opening you up to God. It's opening you up to whatever is floating around out there.
Do you remember from high school the Ouija board story?
No.
You don't remember this?
I don't remember this.
All right. So go back with me to what 1988, 89.
Okay.
And there was always a group of guys that would hang out on like Friday, Saturday nights. And one of the things they would do is play the Ouija board. You don't remember this at all?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
And so they were playing with it one night, and usually nothing happened. But at one point, they got into if I remember correctly.
Oh, is this the argument with the phone?
The argument, yes. They got into an argument with some type of being on it. And they said something along the lines of, if you're real, make the phone ring, and the phone rang. And they did that several times, and the conversation started devolving into yelling at each other. And so finally they unplugged the telephone and it rang one more time. And then that's when everyone skedaddled and left the one guy. He's like,
I remember this story.
yeah,
now.
yeah. And then everyone else left and left the poor one guy. He's like, but I live here. And they're like, yeah, not my concern. And when everyone else went home and left this poor guy in his now haunted basement. Okay, so you remember that story.
I remember that story now.
And yeah, at first you're like, okay, whatever. Everyone in high school has a story, right? But I mean, the people that were telling it, they all had the same story, and it wasn't like they made stuff up. I mean, they could have been. And so it's that kind of thing that sticks with you, right? Moving through life.
So interesting. Growing up, if you remember, we had a Ouija board in Mom and Dad's closet. And
did you break Ouija? Or am I making that up?
I don't remember.
I might stepped on Ouija and broke.
I think
Ouija.
I might have stepped on Ouija. I think he it fell out of and I stepped on it, fell out of the closet, and I stepped on it, and I broke it. That could explain a lot. Maybe.
Explains the course of your life.
It could explain the course of my life. So, about a month or so, well, longer than that, is when Dad was living with me, and he started like.
So this is recently.
This is recently, and so, he began telling me stories because Mom passed away not too long ago, and started telling me stories about Mom, and started telling me about when they first got married, she would use the Ouija board. Did you hear this story?
No.
These stories. And apparently they would get all kinds of things coming through, but then
it was the 70s.
It was a weird time. Late 60s, early 70s, right? It started freaking them out, so they quit doing it. And there was a story. I have to ask Dad.
But she let us play it with it as like 7-year-olds?
Well, you want to watch your soaps. You want kids to be quiet. But
girls, if they're opening up the gateway to hell.
Yeah, I guess so. But And then there was a story about them playing Ouija and then them with a table rocking back and forth. Did you ever hear this?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, either did I. And Dad told me this story, and I kind of wish he was here so I could ask him about this.
You're not going to finish the story about the...
That was all the story I got.
Oh.
Yeah. So and then freaked them out and they quit doing it. So
it freaked them out and they quit playing with it.
Right. So...
which would explain why... No, it doesn't explain, because Mom let us play with it. So, yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it. So let's get back on topic here with the Ouija board. So your question was, in particular, Ouija boards?
Well, Ouija boards in general. And then my bugaboo, which you know long about, is that I have a thing about haunted dolls.
Haunted dolls. Okay. Well, first...
I don't want to talk about them. I don't want to be near them. And I'm not sure if I've told the story on here before, is there's a haunted doll called Robert down in Key West, Florida.
Yeah.
In a museum. And that thing freaks me out. The thought of it haunting me freaks me out. And when we were there on vacation, I wouldn't even go near the museum because I didn't want to annoy Robert, the haunted doll.
So I guess I'm going to have to take that off my list of Christmas gifts for you.
And that also brings up a bone I want to pick with you, Pastor Rick. Like last year, we went to the theater and saw the show and they had the haunted doll.
Yes.
And it was sitting there, and I walk in, and so for the world, let me frame this. So I tell Pastor Rick, you know what, dude, I'll go with you and see these ghost hunter people, but I don't like haunted dolls. He's like, there won't be a haunted doll. Don't worry about it. What do you mean? What are the odds? And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, there won't be a haunted doll. What are the odds? And no. So we go into this theater, the world's smallest lobby, filled with about 100 people, wall to wall. We're pushed up against the wall. I look to the right, and they have on display a haunted doll.
It was under plastic.
Hauntings don't care. I'm like, dude, there's a haunted doll right there. And Pastor Rick's like, oh, yeah, I guess there might be a haunted doll here. Yeah, that happened.
It did. You're fine.
Rub a little dirt on it. You'll be okay.
You're fine. Suck it up. Suck it up.
So no. So what the question is can objects be bad?
All right. So that's really two different questions. All right. So let's go with, can an object be bad? An object's an object. Now, can an object be possessed by something? Oh, I don't know. I've never seen any.
Besides a dryer.
Yeah, I did have to go. All right. So let me finish that thought. I have never seen any object that I thought was haunted. And I don't think objects are haunted. I think people would be haunted. I think
I've heard someone say that before. There's no haunted things, just haunted people.
Right. So I don't see any proof or evidence of that. I did once during the pandemic go and bless a neighbor's dryer because they had called the church and they thought it was haunted.
Did you see anything?
I didn't. And it really, I think, was just misplaced grief over the loss of a spouse is what I think it was. But I still prayed a blessing on the dryer and on the woman and on the house, not because I thought the dryer was haunted by this woman's deceased spouse, but because this woman was clearly worried about it. And so I just said, God, please bless this house. And if there is anything that is, causing her distress here, that is not from you, have that leave, and and help her to know that her spouse is safe with you,
and that
and
provide relief to her,
right? And I never got another call. So I think knowing that her spouse had passed away, was safe with Jesus, and that her dryer was making noises. Right? Things make noises. If you would be here by yourself, you could hear my water heater making all kinds of racket. And it has nothing to do with it being possessed. It has it to do with Lithopolis, Ohio has the worst water on the face of the planet.
It is like liquid rock.
It's like liquid rock. Lithopolis, I've been taught actually means city of stone, right? And so
explains a lot about the water.
Explains a lot about our water. And so that's what I'm thinking that was. Now, back to Ouija boards. If we go to the story of the Witch of Endor, and throughout the whole Bible, it talks about divination.
Yes.
Right. Divination is communicating with spirits, either the spirits of deceased loved ones or some sort of other supernatural being. And the Bible is pretty specific not to do that. And it's specific about not talking to spirits, not because it doesn't work, but because it does work. The issue is that you don't know who you're communicating with.
And you could be fooled.
Correct. If you're talking and praying to God, God is always on your side. God is always trustworthy. If you try talking to some other entity, one, they don't have power like God does.
Right.
Right. So it's like, well, why am I going to tell somebody who can't help me my problems?
And we don't have the ability to discern what's real and what's...
The Bible talks about, in the New Testament, it talks about discerning spirits. And it's important for us to know that there are spirits out there who are not for us. And it sounds odd in 2025 to be talking about the spiritual world, and you sound all woo-woo and weird.
You do.
But I think it's important. Again, if you are a Christian, you by definition believe in a spiritual world. And the Bible mentions, right? Jesus talks about things like demons, right?
Yeah.
So if I trust Jesus when he tells me other things, why am I not going to trust Jesus when he talks about demons? Why am I going to say, oh, well, he was
because I need to sleep at night.
Right. No. I mean, it makes sense. It's
like when the demons are cast into the pigs and go off the cliff. That always freaked me out as a kid.
Well, yeah, it should. It's a freaky story. But the way I look at it as a pastor is for me to say, oh, Jesus didn't know what he was talking about there, but he knows what he's talking about when he talks about the resurrection. He doesn't know what he's talking about there. Oh, this person really wasn't demon possessed. This person had this ailment, but Jesus didn't know that. But Jesus knows that I need a savior, right?
Right.
Again, I'm not a biblical literalist by any stretch of the imagination, but I think you need to take what Jesus says seriously. And when Jesus talks about there being literal demons, I think Jesus knows what he's talking about. Now, do I think there's demons hiding around the corner? No. Do I think everything is demonic? No. Do I believe that
Zach
listening?
Bagans disagrees with you.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
demons everywhere.
So let's get into that here real quick. All right.
Come at me, bro.
Right. So
For those of you who don't know, that's the guy from Ghost Hunters.
the guys from Ghost Hunters.
The paranormal.
So
dude.
can you ghost hunt and be a Christian? Well, I think you have to define what you mean by ghost hunting, because there's really two different ideas here.
Right.
There is the one where I want to see, is there really a spiritual side to life? Are there such things as quote unquote ghosts or spirits? And so I'm going to go look at an old house and listen and look around and see if I see anything.
Right.
Maybe take a tape recorder to see if I hear anything. That is a very passive thing. It's a very passive event or a very passive activity.
Different than a Ouija board where you're
It's
trying to
different. You're not trying to communicate with the ghost or the spirit. You're just trying to see if they exist. And I kind of put that in the same category as going on a ghost tour. We've all been on ghost tours,
Right.
where you go and you look around, usually someplace historical, and usually the ghost tour is mostly historical anyway. I remember a few years ago, you and I went on probably the world's most boring ghost tour.
That's charitable.
Oh my gosh, this thing was boring, and we were walking around downtown of this little town, and
The only thing we saw was a guy watching television.
right, and so
Who looked annoyed that we were looking in
so
his
the
picture
scariest
window.
part was this one house, because it was like glowing, and it turned out it wasn't part of the tour. It was just some guy sitting in his house watching TV at night, and
Why are there groups of people looking at me?
yeah, and his curtains were open, and we're all standing out on the sidewalk in front of his house looking in
Yes.
his window. Yeah. That was fun. Or like I'm thinking,
And we were cold, so this made it better was when you're freezing to death.
yeah, because I think we ended up cutting it short and going home and watching Charlie Brown with Owen.
Yeah,
If I remember right.
Yeah, because that was much more entertaining.
It was much more entertaining. I remember years and years ago went on one at Colonial Williamsburg, and the same thing. It was so boring, and we ended up, the group turned left and we turned right because it was so boring.
And a complete side note, but a public service message for all people listening. The best bread pudding I have ever had in my entire life that I think about to this day was at Colonial Williamsburg. I was just telling the lovely and talented Mrs. Burke about that the other day.
And I'm sure you can probably find the recipe if you go to their website.
It's their bread. Hey, Colonial Williamsburg, if you're listening and have that bread pudding, send some my way. It was like literally the best food I've ever put in my face.
So can you go ghost hunting? Yeah, I don't see anything particularly wrong with it. I know a few years back, okay, this would have been a decade and a half ago, I had a Christian ghost hunter come to my church at Halloween time.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, and he met him getting my car worked on, and he did it from a Christian perspective. They prayed. They didn't communicate with the ghost. They just went to people's homes who said they were having problems with ghosts, looked around, and then if they thought they sensed something, they would say a prayer with the people, and it was a nice time, pretty benign. And it was on I'm going to say we did it on like a Friday night, Saturday night kind of deal. and we had it in our fellowship hall. And the guy, the ghost hunter, came and he had like a little PowerPoint presentation, and then we had like chili or something, and we packed the place out. It was packed out. Lots of non-church going folks showed up.
A lot of people are very interested in this topic.
Really, and it was
That's why the Travel Channel is no longer the Travel Channel.
right.
It's the Paranormal Channel.
And it was say it was Halloween time. But what always cracks me up on those type of things is there's always like that one person that shows up who has like a gazillion stories.
Yeah,
because this ghost hunter asked, "Does anybody have any stories they want to share?" And this one woman raised her hand, and just kept raising her hand. "Oh yeah, I had this happen to me. I had that happen to me. I had that." And you're like, "Really? So you've had 2 ghosts, a UFO encounter?" I'm not even sure how we got there.
What are the odds?
And a near-death experience, right?
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I remember the guy who was the ghost hunter was like, "Well, if you want to talk later, we can talk." Because like she just kept raising her hand, right? And you start to think that maybe she doesn't have a ghost problem. She's got some other problems,
right?
Yeah.
So, but I always because these kind of things freak me out. The paranormal, ghosts, demons especially.
Yeah.
And so I always just took solace in the fact that really wasn't what the Bible was talking about. They were just mistaken.
Yeah. Well, and
it just makes life easier to live that way.
And a modern historical critical kind of viewpoint of the Bible would say that demon possessed people mentioned in the New Testament were actually people who suffered from seizures or
schizophrenia, maybe
or other sorts of ailments. And I always have a couple of thoughts about that. One, as a parent of a child who suffers from epilepsy, I find that a bit offensive when they say that a demon-possessed person in the Bible is really somebody suffering from the same disease my child has or the same ailment my child has.
Never once, and as someone who's met your son multiple times, never once have I ever thought he was possessed by anything.
No. Of course, you haven't been here when you accidentally turn off one of his favorite shows.
Fair.
But also, again, I think that when we look at it that way, we are cutting out a portion of the story that's important. And that is that there are spiritual forces actively working against us and working against God's plan for the world. And unless we understand that, we are at a disadvantage. Again, I'm not somebody who's walking around thinking that there are spirits out to get me all the time. But at the end of the day, you can't read the Bible and believe it and not come to the conclusion that there are other spirits out there. So that then takes me to the Ouija board. Do I think a Ouija board is any different than any other game? Or let me back up. So do I think the Ouija board in and of itself is evil? No.
It's just an object.
It's just an object. As I said, it's produced on the same factory that produces Risk and Monopoly and Clue and all these other games that we play with our families all the time. What it does do, though, is it gives you the opportunity to focus your attention and to purposely try to summon spiritual entities to you. And while that may sound benign, I think the Bible's onto something when it says you got to be careful with that.
And I just had a thought that during the spiritualist movement of the Victorian era,
right,
where there was an emphasis on trying to contact spirits of your loved ones, spirits of whatnot.
Yeah.
Most of the time when you read about that historically, it is portrayed as nothing but hoaxes, hucksters, someone running a con.
Correct.
But in the same vein that if you focus your energy on doing the connection, like at the Ouija board that you just mentioned, could that then translate into say someone trying to contact a dead loved one at a seance, that you could actually be contacting, that they're maybe not always making it up, that they really could be contacting something. Might not be the person you think it is, but it's not 100% fake,
Kind of like the movie Ghost, right?
right?
Where Whoopi Goldberg is a huckster, but then accidentally
Summons Patrick Swayze.
correct, and is kind of surprised by it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably true, right? If you think about like the spiritualist movement and the history of at least the recent history in the last century or two of mediumship, like the Fox sisters, for instance.
Were those the ladies from the Victorian era?
Right. Yeah. The Fox sisters were big right after the Civil War. You had Catherine and Margarita, and then you had their older sister Leah, who kind of worked as their manager. And they would draw huge crowds. They were quite the celebrity for a number of years. And then what happened is they got caught and they ended up admitting, and then they took it back.
That they were faking it.
They're faking it. Yeah. And I think that's a good way of looking at things, is that most of the time people are faking it, right?
Right.
But every once in a while somebody connects into something that is real, and that's where you got to be careful, right? And anytime you open yourself up to the negative, you are playing with things you don't know about.
So my fear and avoidance of haunted dolls, from what I hear from you saying, is just self-preservation and common sense.
Well, one, dolls in and of themselves, especially like older dolls, like porcelain dolls, are just creepy.
Do you remember when Mom used to have all those dolls on the couch?
Well, do you remember when Grandma had those dolls in their upstairs bedroom when we used to stay with Grandma and Grandpa Joseph?
Yes.
And they had all those dolls?
Those
Terrifying.
were creepy.
Terrifying.
Not as creepy as those dolls, though, you can get of your loved ones or your pets.
Oh, those are creepy. Yeah, you could, because remember, Mom for years wanted one made of Cindy.
Yeah, Cindy's our sister.
Yeah, and we were all like, "No, Mom, you don't want that. That is creepy and weird."
Yeah,
creepy and weird. Yeah, it just has to do with it looking like a human, but not really being
that
human.
uncanny valley of it.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought of a haunted doll. Now, do I believe there are really haunted dolls? No, I don't think so. I think even the most
Annabelle's gonna be mad at you.
I just listened to a whole podcast about Annabelle and how that story came about, and
that the Warrens
they made it up. Yeah. From
grifters. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any. I've never seen any proof myself that any object could be haunted per se. But I believe people are haunted. I believe people open themselves up to negativity. I think people sometimes have issues that come across as being haunted.
And this is why we go back to the biblical story we were talking about, that the practice of divination and talking to the dead was banned because they recognized that it had negative consequences.
So, all right. So let's say we go back to ghost hunting.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, touring a quote unquote haunted
going
house.
up to the
Mansfield Reformatory, or going to, on the haunted state house tours.
Yeah. Which I love those.
Which, by the way, last time we went to the haunted state house, they caught Abraham Lincoln on fire. Remember?
I don't.
Maybe you weren't there.
I've been to it a couple times.
So the haunted state house is here in Columbus, Ohio State House, and they have a tour every year. And you go up, and I think the money goes for restoration.
I think it does, yeah.
Something. And they basically give you the tour of the state, or the history of the state house. And they have like different setups, like the place where all of the representatives meet, that they have it set up like a ballroom, because at one point it was a ballroom where Abraham Lincoln was.
And Samuel Chase's daughter is dancing the night away
with Abraham Lincoln,
yeah.
and they have it set up. And then a big part of the tour is at the end, after Lincoln was assassinated, his funeral train came through Columbus, and he was laid in state in the rotunda of the State House. And there in the rotunda, they have a mock-up of Lincoln's coffin, and then they have 4 actors standing around it dressed as soldiers. And we were finishing up the tour, and we're standing there, and we're listening to the tour guide give her spiel, and all of a sudden you notice like smoke coming out from underneath the quote unquote coffin. And you think, oh, this must be a special
that's a really nice effect.
And then you're like, that smells really real.
Smells like Rome burning.
And then all of a sudden, you see the one guard kind of turn around, the actor turn around, and then you see him like, oh, and then you see somebody run over and get a fire. What had happened apparently is they had lights
on fire,
and they had moved the light too close to they had like foliage around it, and it caught one of the flowers on fire or something on fire, and it was smoldering. Now, before anybody worries, there was nobody actually in the coffin, but still, and they had to put it out.
The 16th president was safe.
Yeah. So do I have any problem with doing that? No. I think that's just pastime. However, what happens if you go ghost hunting, and instead of just bringing your eyes and your ears and your camera or even a tape recorder, you decide to bring along one of these electronic gadgets they have for ghost hunting, where you're trying to communicate with them?
Does that cross the line?
I think that if it doesn't cross the line into necromancy, it is awful close, because you are no longer now just observing. You are now trying to communicate. You're trying to get information.
And that would be the same as using a Ouija board.
I think it would be the same as using a Ouija board. What's your name? Who are you? Tell me about where you're at. Tell me about the future. Tell me about the past, right? That's really no different than what Saul was trying to do when he went to the Witch of Endor. So,
and even though most of those devices don't show anything except electromagnetic readings from faulty wiring,
basically, yeah.
It's still the idea of doing it that's the problem.
Right. Okay, Rob. So, the bottom line is, should we use a Ouija board?
No. That's the answer. No.
So you are strongly in the do not use the Ouija board camp.
I am team no Ouija.
No Ouija. You know, as a pastor, I got to say I'm with you on this. Not that I'm scared of a game.
I am.
Yeah, as we said, it's a game that just comes right off of the same old assembly line as Monopoly. But I think it opens you up to messing with stuff that we probably shouldn't be messing with. Now, as far as ghost hunting goes, I don't think there's anything wrong with a Christian being interested in spiritual matters. I think the issue comes is when you try to communicate or to get some sort of information from spiritual entities other than God, because only God we can trust in.
That makes sense,
right? So I would say that if you want to go on a haunted tour, I think that's cool. If you want to put a tape recorder in your house because you think it's haunted to get some sort of evidence so somebody believes you, yeah, I think that's fine. If you want to get a device and start trying to communicate with whatever it is,
that's where you cross the line.
I think that's where you start to cross the line into some dangerous territory.
Yeah,
because you don't know who or what it is you're communicating with,
and it might not be who you think it is, or what you think it is,
and you are probably not as equipped to deal with that situation as you might think you are.
Absolutely.
So the way I look at it is, God told us not to do such things in the Bible for a reason. And God isn't just being mean because he doesn't want us to have fun. It's because God knows things that you don't. So I would just be careful about that.
So what I'm hearing is God's on my team. No Ouija.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that investigating to see if there is some sort of spiritual issue, um, especially if somebody says that they're having some issues, like they feel like they're haunted and it's
Right.
upsetting their life. I don't think making sure that something like that is really happening is a problem. I think if you then decide, well, this is an opportunity to talk to something more powerful than I am and get some scoop on life, you don't want to do that. Again, I don't have a huge amount of experience with this, but the few times that I have had somebody say something like this to me, my feeling is that you believe them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's bothering you, it's bothering you. And God understands if it's psychological or if it's something physical. And we'll just take it as this is something that needs to go to God. We'll do a prayer or ask for God's blessings, and we'll leave it at that. But I also think it's important that you don't have a fear-based faith, right? Because that the Bible says that there is nothing stronger than God, and that we don't need to fear any entity. So I don't think we should walk around being scared, right? You can have a real fear-based life, you know.
Right.
What do you think, Rob?
I mean, I don't have the theological depth of knowledge that you do, but I just go with the common sense. Don't mess with things you don't know about.
Yes.
So I'm not messing with things that I don't know anything about, like spirits and whatnot. So just
Electricity.
No, but seriously,
if you don't, if it's like I'm going to rewire my house, but I only know the very basics of electricity.
Right, I wouldn't go doing that.
Right, bad idea.
Bad things are going to happen.
Bad things are going to happen, and I think this is a similar notion. Thanks, Rob, for
Absolutely.
talking about necromancy and the story of Saul and the Witch of Endor. If you are looking for a church home, we would love to see you at Groveport United Methodist Church. Our worship services are at 10:30 a.m. every Sunday, online or in person. Until next week, have a wonderful holiday season. Take care. God bless.
Bye, everybody.